Hey guys, and welcome back to the web design decal. This week for design, we're going to cover motion, flow, and aesthetic. So motion comes in the form of UI animations in web design, and using them correctly is really important to having a good user experience in any web application. So here's an example of someone's idea for PayPal on Dribbble, and upon first look, this seems like a great design. It has clean graphic, the receipt unfolds in a very natural way, and it's generally pretty pleasing to the eye. But the problem is that you're focused on the animation and the animation's quality when we see this animation as a good thing. But in reality, it really slows down the way the user interacts with PayPal. If you were actually trying to use this, you would have to wait a solid 30 seconds-ish to actually see what's in your cart and to actually access the barcode if you're trying to access that. And in general, users have a pretty short attention span, and you want to make sure that you give the user what they need as soon as they need it. You don't want to give that delay as to annoy them. So let's look at some good examples of UI animation. So on the right, I have this graphic of loading animation where you slide down on the menu and it has a circle that fills and then the content rises back up. This is a good example of animation in usage in web design because it helps the content become more user-friendly, since it's showing that it gives meaning to the loading. The user doesn't have to just wait with a blank page. They know that the page is loading and it gives them something to look at in the meantime. The animation should not be the main attraction, your content should be. And this loading animation successfully does that, since it enhances the user's experience of going through a site and reduces boredom and keeps the website very intuitive. So the best uses of animation in general are loading screens, assisting in user experience, so general flow of the website, and bringing up new pages smoothly, and also creatively expressing ideas. You can include animations into graphics on the sides of your site while you're scrolling, or in any other way that doesn't distract from the content itself. So here's an example of a page with a basic transition between web pages. Currently, it's kind of abrupt and quick, and it's a little bit jarring on the eye since so much changes in between these two pages. So on the following slide, we can see that this designer has included an animation that really improves the transition between the pages by pulling the images in and out in a way that's attractive and very easy on the eyes, and things seem to slide into place very naturally. Another good thing to consider when making these animations is considering real physics and what people expect in terms of movement. How do people expect things to slide according to gravity? These images are like papers being slid out through a folder, or being pulled out of a folder, or being pulled off of screen. It's very normal for our eyes to detect this, but some other more active animations might be less natural for a user and can be distracting rather than helpful. So you can make these animations in applications like InVision, which generally helps with any sort of interaction, so how your user will interact with buttons and text boxes and scrolling and many other aspects of your site. That Adobe XD, they have some interaction there too, but InVision kind of has a more in-depth way of exploring how interaction between different elements of your product work. There's also After Effects, which involves animating your designs rather than designing the interaction between them, and that can work really well when you're trying to present your ideas, since InVision is more of an interactive activity similar to like opening a game or like using the app, whereas Adobe After Effects will act more of like a short video that demonstrates what is happening within your product. So both of these are really cool to play with. We won't be doing any real tutorials of it probably in this class, but if you want to look into them more, I've linked them in the slides, and they have really great tutorials on how to use them. They also should be free for the most part, since we're students and we have the credentials given by the school. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about redesigning, which will kind of cover all of the 3 topics I mentioned at the beginning. So aesthetic, flow, and motion. Probably not as much motion, but more so flow and general aesthetic. It also goes through the process of designing something in general, but this is good to keep in mind as you continue in your design career and life. So yeah, I'm going to go through how to do a redesign of the site from Homework 4, which is rentskis.com. And as you can see here, this is the same landing page that you guys were given in that homework. And yeah, we're just going to start figuring out how to redesign the landing page. So step 1 is to figure out what is good about the site already and what are its issues and what can be improved. So basically keep and discard. What are you going to keep? What are you going to discard? So when we look at this site, we need to keep in mind, what are the customers trying to do and what is the company trying to do, and how can we make this site accomplish goals for both of them? So a user or the customer wants to go to this site to rent equipment easily and conveniently and cheaply, most likely. The company wants to advertise themselves as very convenient and cost effective, and they want their users to enjoy their experience going through the website. They probably also have specific features that they want to really promote about their company, and they probably also have an ideal demographic that they're going for. So on the right, I have selected a couple items that I think will be useful when redesigning, things that I think I want to keep or include or change in my redesign. So that's the logo, because that's the identifying feature of the company. The nav bar, always an important thing. Probably going to keep the same pages and tabs that they have already for the most part, because that would put the most ease on how the company's inner workings are. I also kept the rentskis.com as your most convenient ski rental option, because some catchphrases like that are very important for what you want to highlight in your redesign. So I thought that that was an important phrase because it really captured what their goals were. I also wanted to keep the functionality of being able to immediately view packages from the front screen because it's a very useful feature, and that's what people want to do as soon as they get to this site. So putting it up front was a good decision on their part, but maybe decluttering it a little bit. So moving on to the next step, which is sketching. It's basically writing down all of your ideas and about how to incorporate what they already have and what you want to change, and try to come with solutions for the problems that we've identified. So on the original site, they have kind of too much going on, and we want to simplify it, make it more inviting since it's a little bland at the moment, and maybe update it with in terms of graphics and aesthetic. They don't really have a strong theme here, so giving the site personality would be really important. So in the 4 options I kind of sketched out, we have option 1, which is kind of a more mature, classic vibe, with serif fonts and kind of glossy photos, or that's the idea, and a slideshow. So that is kind of a more mature and classic aesthetic. Then option 2 is a little more middle of the road. So it would have sans serif fonts, which make it more tech savvy in some ways, and then some animated illustrations at the bottom, large text that I took from the original site, and a button to do bookings. That has the illustrations that I envisioned were going to be fairly simplistic and make them things that pretty much any customer or user can relate to. And I don't know if it's that clear, but they are doing skiing and snowboarding things, which include the goal of the site in them, and it should show people happily using the product to emphasize their convenience and how great their site is. Then option 3 is almost like an artsy vibe, kind of hip. It's got some ideally there'd be some close-ups of the equipment, maybe to show the quality of the equipment for the price, and kind of gives it an edgy vibe that might be different from what other companies are going for. And I was also thinking of a combination between serif and sans serif fonts. Fonts kind of help with giving the general mood of the site. So serif in general is more classic, more old-fashioned, I guess, and then serif is more techy, hip. So the combination of the two would kind of give that artsy vibe I'm going for. We talked more about fonts in the typography lecture, if you want to recall more of why I am picking these fonts in different places. So then option 4 has an illustration on the right side and then booking on the left, and it focuses on mostly sans serif. It's very family friendly because of the animation. I mean, the illustration and the visuals in general. It has like a snowboard shape around the logo, possibly, which is kind of reminiscent of the original site. And yeah, basically each one of these embodies a different aesthetic and a different direction the company could go in terms of how they want to market themselves through the site. And they would also make the user experience better because all 4 of them make the site more interesting, more inviting, and give the company a clear personality for the user to interact with, as well as simplifying what the user has to see and click through. So I end up picking the fourth option because it seemed like a good middle ground between all of them. It's got sans serif fonts that make it kind of techy and approachable, because I felt that renting online through a rentskis.com, it's fairly important to have the techie side of it emphasized, and then the illustration emphasizing the family-friendly aspects of it, and then the booking from the homepage aspect of it continues with the convenience. So step 3, we make the lo-fi wireframes and a general style guide. So I'm going to open up XD and make the wireframe. So I'm just going to open the basic web 1920 by 1080 size, and we're going to make a lo-fi frame. So if you double click in this corner, you can change the title, and we're quickly going to go through and using our sketch, we are going to make our lo-fi wireframe. So I'm kind of going to gloss over exactly what tools I'm using to make these things, since I covered it in the XD intro, but I will explain to some extent what I'm doing. So I made a box for the logo and a box for some large text that we're going to put on the screen here, and then here's a smaller box for input, and I'm going to duplicate that. Okay. And then I'm going to have a box for the Find Packages button, which is going to be like that. And then I'm going to make another big box for the graphic. So it looks something like this for now. And then we're going to go in and add a little bit of text. So I'm going to use this font's fine for now. It's just, oops. Never mind. We are going to use some random font, it seems. Okay, so resorts. This is really small, but we'll change it in a second. Let's just drag that up a little bit. Okay, so we're going to use this font. I'm going to put it over here. Repeat grid. To have a couple more of those. There, now we have a rough idea of the nav bar. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. And we have a general idea of what is going on here. So I'm going to write illustration here. So that you can see it, and then the logo. Since labeling things in your wireframes is pretty good practice in general, so you remember what things are. Large text. Oops. And okay. So now we have our low fidelity wireframe. Now I want to go back in to the original site screenshot and take a look at what colors they have going on here and see what things I want to carry on into my redesign. So I think I want to keep some form of orange, some form of this blue because it's a pretty good combination, and this lighter blue. And we're going to keep basically all of their colors, but just reutilize them in a more meaningful way than they have. I'm also going to slightly change which tones they are. So I'm going to just put some boxes at the bottom here that will contain my colors. So let's do like a golden orange color, and then I'm thinking for the background color maybe doing something kind of like dark mode. So I'm gonna do, since they kind of have the blue background going on, I'm going to accentuate that contrast a little bit more, and we're going to pick a really dark, very low saturated blue for the background. I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm also gonna pick a gray bluish color for the illustration accent as well, and I'm gonna pick one other color, which I think I'm going to make like a dark pine green, since they're in a ski area and they tend to have pine trees. It's relatively arbitrary, but I feel like it will match what we have going on fairly well. So I think that looks pretty good. So now we have a general, I was gonna make an accent blue. Once I do this, we'll have a general idea of the colors that we want to use in the illustration and in the site itself. So let's move that back here. Something like this. It's a little bit purpley. I'm gonna move it down a little bit. There we go. So now we have the blue, or the light blue, the dark blue, the orange, the green, and a gray color for us to use throughout the site. Let me resume the presentation. So we figured out the color. Another good thing to do before carrying on is to figure out the typography. So we're going to go back to XD, and currently I'm using this font, which is Apple System UI font, and I'm going to take a look at the different looks that it has in different forms, because that's important if you're going to use the same or similar fonts throughout the site. So I am going to pick this font as one of the main fonts on this site. So we can save this as add character style to assets so that we have it for later. We can also save all of these colors, but I am not going to do that. And I think we should have a different font for the logo. So let's go through. You can just use the arrow keys here and it'll just go through all of the different fonts. So I'm looking for a very round looking sans serif font that will kind of go with the theme of being relatively techy and hip, which is kind of what I'm going for. Let's try Futura. Let's try typing in rentskis.com. No, I don't want to capitalize. And seeing how that looks pretty good in combination with this. We want to diversify the logo font from the other fonts because that can help make your site look more interesting. But I'm going to go through and look through a couple more options. That I have built into my computer already. So this is Sophia Pro, and there's only this one style of it, so I think I'm going to pick this one for my logo. So now we have our fonts, and we can continue on in our process. So after we wireframed the basic general idea of the site, we sketched it out, and we created a general style guide for ourselves, we can go on and make the graphics. This could also involve searching them up or sourcing them from some free graphics website, photographs, icons, all that kind of stuff. In this case, I actually made this graphic in Adobe Illustrator, but if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can ask me about it, or you can find tutorials online. There are a ton of great ones. Basically, I tried to incorporate the colors, complement those colors that I picked before, and really accentuate the general theme that we're going for with the site. So, as we move to the high fidelity mockups, we can add that graphic to our wireframe. So, let's start the high fidelity mockup. So I'm going to make the background of this. Let's do this so you can see both of them at the same time. So I want this dark blue color to be the background, so I'll select this and fill it like that. Now, upon seeing it larger, maybe I don't like this color as much, so I'm going to bring the saturation level down even more and darken it a little bit. There, I like that better. Then I can change this color to make them match correspondingly. Next, I'm going to bring in the illustration that I made. So I'm going to add it in. So I'm going to go to my Finder, and you just go to wherever you have your image. I'm going to open it, and I'm going to copy this image and paste it in. You don't want to do paste appearance because then it'll change the size of it, and if you drag it in, you have to be sure where you want to drag it in, because otherwise it will take the form of your artboard and it'll look super weird. But yeah, so basically I drag it in. It's already sized the way that I want it to. I just have to position it. So this has general flow to it, and I put more weight at the bottom because that makes more sense to what the eye sees. It's generally part of graphic and visual and art theory. If you are interested in that, that is also something that I can cover in another lecture or in office hours, etc. But yeah, we're going to continue with this. I'm going to reference my slides at the same time. So next let's include the logo. So I'm going to take this and put it here. We're going to pick white as the color. So now I'm not sure how I want to what size I want the logo to be. It looks good here, but what if I want to see how it will appear to the user of my site? So there's a play button in the corner, which lets you preview your site as so. And now we can see that this graphic is quite large comparatively to everything else on the page. So maybe you want to make this text more obvious and to the user. So I think the size is fairly okay. We're just going to increase it slightly. And then preview it again. Oops. And that looks a little bit better. I'm also going to move it up because if you move your eye across the screen, the nav bar is going to be pretty close to the edge of our snowboarder if we keep it the way it currently is, and we want to keep the spacing good as goes along with the visual hierarchy rules. So let's pull it up slightly, and then we can make our nav bar. So coloring this might seem kind of difficult because we have multiple colors to account for. I'm also going to increase this so it'll look a little bit better. I'm going to use one of these accent colors that we picked out and try them for contrast with the rest of the image. So the yellow doesn't really come out that strong, and nor does that, but I think we should stick to the yellow, and then we can change the font type. So resorts, then we want deliveries, or delivery, contact us, and sign in as our different options. So let's preview this. The sizing seems pretty good. This isn't, our nav bar isn't aligned with our logo though, so we can align it and fix its appearance. So let's make it bold. Also maybe want to try out the green that we have. A lot of working on mockups is just fiddling with it until it looks good. So that green is not going to cut it either. Okay. So basically we will continue adjusting this until it looks good. These grid lines can help you align it with the rest of it. Ooh, that helps. And I just changed the font. I'm gonna try to get through this quickly. Okay, so I try to pick this color, and we're going to look at it in preview guide, and still it doesn't seem like anything is looking right. So here's where we can change our design, and I'm going to make an overlay, and we can drag this down and resize it. Until it looks like what we want it to look like, and something that will work effectively. So now we have more space for our content on the left, and we have this bar which I can color in. Let's actually do this color, and we're going to there, and then bring this up until it aligns. And then we can go ahead and add in the rest of our items. So we're going to do your let's go back to what we wanted to put in. So we wanted to put in make it big and turn it to a paragraph so it can wrap the way that we want it to. Oops. And then increase the size. Again, most of making these is fiddling. So here, we aligned it with the rest of it. I want to do this to make it the sides more similar. So this margin versus this margin. And now we have our large text. And then I'm going to quickly make 2 boxes for drop down. See, regular, and then we're going to downsize it. eyedropper tool. Pretty simple version of what we have, and then I'm going to do small triangle for the drop down, rotate it. And then fix the spacing. And add a button. And then we will be pretty much done with this. Let's use our accent color. See. Maybe I feel like I don't like exactly how this looks, but I don't know exactly why. We can take a look here, reevaluate. The preview will help you decide what you want to change about your design. Again, we can fiddle with this for a long time, but I am going to pretty much stop it at this. So we have our high fidelity mockup based on the original site. It makes it more inviting. It includes the functionality that the user is looking for, and it just gives it in general some more personality and a more professional feel. So after you've developed your high fidelity mockup, how do you move this over to coding? So even when we designed it and when I put in the different elements, we did it in several groups. We did the illustration, we did the nav bar, and we did the ordering function. So you can think about coding it in a very similar way. For example, the illustration is an image on its own, and you would position that and create its own div for that. A div perhaps for the image and for this grouping here, and since they both share the same space, and you can use Flexbox to adjust how they look on the page together. You would again group all of these aspects together in the same div, because that'll help with how you're going to space with, and they act as a group. You want to put them together on the page in the same group. How you want to allocate things together on a page should be a major thing that you consider when grouping things for coding. And yeah, keep that in mind. Things with the same format should have the same tags for CSS, because then you can apply the same formatting to them all at the same time. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can email me directly at aja@berkeley.edu, or post your questions to our piazza. And here's the attendance word. Thanks for listening.